and welcome to the 16th episode of the Select Characters podcast. Glad to have you with us. Ryan, unfortunately, will not be here this week. He is currently incapacitated, but fortunately, with me, shrunk down to microscopic size and riding a vessel, maybe to fix Ryan? Either way, we're inside Ryan, is what I'm saying. Over to my left, monitoring the vital signs and bodily goops and fluids, I have Christopher Anderson.
Hello. Hey, something happened this week, which I thought was never going to happen, but I'm actually interested in Destiny again.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah, the Taken King is looking pretty good, apart from the price point, but it seems like they're going to fix everything that I didn't like about the game. So, I'm thinking of jumping back in.
So does that mean you're not going to try to fix Ryan?
I'm sorry.
We can do both. We can do both.
Well, we've got some time until the Taken King comes out, so yeah.
That sounds good. Well, stay tuned, and we'll see where we go from there. Drink your Red Bull, right?
Yes. Throw money at the screen. Yeah. Apparently, that is something that I am going to do.
But as we've seen before, if you make good content, all that stuff passes.
Yes.
All right, over here to my left, loaded down with tiny guns, our mercenary specialist. They call him the bacterial sniper, Enrique Cancel. How are you?
Oh, we're doing this. I'm good.
All right.
We're shooting everything that moves.
Locked and loaded. Well, maybe not. Oh, you know what? Whatever, man. You know?
Hey, body can always make new cells. We're good.
Yeah, we pay you the mercenary fee. You decide what needs shooting. All right, cruising on forward. Let's talk about what we have been playing. All right, so it has been another great week for video games. Let's talk a little bit about what we've been playing. And let's start with you, Enrique.
I'm actually still playing a little bit of XCOM. And I actually picked up Fire Emblem Awakening again.
Very cool.
I had an itch for that turn-based combat, and that one is such an awesome game.
What's the update on XCOM? Still alive?
You unfortunately have passed away.
Fuck, knew it.
But you did it heroically. You actually you passed away on the Newfoundland mission.
Okay, I can handle that.
For those of you that don't know, it's a mission where it starts off innocuous enough where you just have to kind of go to this old shipyard with a couple whale carcasses and stuff, and all you have to do is deactivate a beacon. But as soon as you do that, you get a swarm of chrysalids that just start exploding endlessly, and you have to hightail it back to the ship.
Well, that's okay, man. You know, I woke up in a cold sweat, and I thought, you know what?
Dude, it's okay. You went out like a G, because you were my prime sniper, and you were equipped with Archangel armor, so, you were kind of flying up everywhere and picking all the little alien chrysalids off, and you actually managed to let everybody escape.
Good job, me.
What about me?
You're still good. You're actually a psychic soldier now. Good for you.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Congratulations.
What does that mean?
You have psychic abilities, sir. You can mind control other enemy opponents, and you have a cool little psi shield.
Yeah, I like that.
So you're rocking that out.
Keep us posted.
Yep, and Ryan is still he's still rocking because I made him a mech, so he's got his little mech power fist, and he's a fisting machine.
Good job, Ryan. Are you going back through Fire Emblem to get ready to play the new one?
Yeah, actually, because I saw the trailer for it at Gamescom and some other gameplay stuff, and it just kind of started scratching that itch. And I just remember how much I love that game. Although it quickly turns into a eugenics program again, because they have that whole family thing where you can marry off different characters, and they can have offspring. The offspring inherit traits from the previous characters, so you get into this whole selective breeding thing to breed the most powerful units.
This is an RPG we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
sort of. Well, yeah,
kind of. It's like a tactics kind of game.
Right.
The only thing I'm not crazy about, though, is I was looking at the new Fire Emblem Fates is actually split into 2 different titles, depending on what side you want to go with.
Yeah, that it was locked. Once you make that decision, it's a few hours in, and once you make it, it sort of locks everything else out.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping, because Japan actually released a 3rd edition that had both stories in it, and I'm kind of hoping they release that in the States, because I don't know. I don't like the idea of having to play through 2 different versions of the game for a story.
I don't blame you.
Wait, are we talking a Pokemon Red and Blue type situation?
Yes.
2 different cartridges?
Yep, with 2 different story branches.
Oh, that's a bit strange.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Okay. But are the 2 stories dissimilar enough, different enough to warrant getting them both?
From the sound of it, yes, because it's basically 2 different kingdoms that are going to go to war with each other.
Right.
One kingdom is very, warmongering, honor-based. The other kingdom is more pacifist. So I guess they both have completely different stories depending on who you go with.
So maybe you shouldn't see it as one game split up into 2, but 2 separate games, telling 2 sides of the same story. Just 2 games instead of 1.
It's not a bad idea. It just happened to tie together in some places.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Cool, man. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. And then Cataclysm Dark Days Beyond, which we did for a little video game book club, but we'll be discussing that later.
Yeah.
Groovy. And Chris?
I've been playing the Swindle.
Oh, cool.
Since yesterday evening. It's pretty interesting. It's set in cyberpunk Victorian... No, not cyberpunk, steampunk Victorian London, which is a bit of a tired concept now, but it looks nice. And the aim of the thing is, there's a machine in Scotland Yard, and it's going to get activated in 100 days. Once that gets activated, crime is going to be impossible. Now, you, as an honest criminal, you can't really have that.
No.
So you have 100 days to do a heist a day, trying to get money so you can buy skills and get better at, stealing stuff. So you can go to Scotland Yard and steal that machine. So a crimeless future does not happen. And it's all randomly generated. It's a nice mixture between platforming, action, and stealth. It looks like a 2D platformer, but there's a stealth element to that. And it's pretty good. The music's pretty good as well, which I like.
That sounds awesome. How would you compare it to, like, Mark of the Ninja, as far as, like, stealth-wise?
I have not played Mark of the Ninja, so anything I would say on that would be a lie.
Okay.
So,
it's kind of the same.
You really are an honest criminal.
Yes.
The ultimate swindle. That sounds pretty good, though.
Yeah, it does. And I've read some reviews on that game, and apparently it is quite good. But it can be frustrating as well. And I'm looking forward to playing the rest.
Most things that are randomly generated kind of come out like that.
Yeah, exactly. And because they're not custom made, some levels feel less good, I want to say.
Yeah.
Because they're not, they're not designed by someone. They're randomly generated.
Any carryover between playthroughs?
I haven't finished the first playthrough yet, so I don't know.
Okay, cool.
You said you read some reviews on it. Was that pre or post gameplay for yourself?
That was pre.
Okay, I was going to say, do you ever, after you've been playing a game for a while, do you ever go read reviews on it just to see if people's, opinion matches up with what you're enjoying from the game?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Yeah, I go to the people I trust, on YouTube, or writers that I trust, just to see what they think of the game.
I haven't done that. Maybe I should.
Yeah, it's interesting to see if other people caught the same things that you did. It's sometimes interesting to read.
For sure.
Any other questions?
No. That's about it, man. Anything else you play?
Yeah, Dark Days Ahead, but we'll get into that later. And I've been playing a shit ton of City Skylines again.
Awesome.
It's a game that I start up every now and then. And the new expansion's coming up. They're adding nights, among other things. So I'm making a city, trying to make it look pretty. So when I buy the expansion, it's going to look really good at night.
Yeah, with all the cars all backed up, headlights everywhere.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, Gridlock Simulator 2015 is...
But really
it's
pretty at nighttime. Brake lights to the horizon. Cool, man. As for me, been kind of having a little bit of an FPS itch and getting sort of playing on a weird schedule between Team Fortress and Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike kept locking me out from... You can only play like 2 competitive games or whatever. Anyway, The moral of the story is I picked up a game called Dirty Bomb, which was free to play, class-based shooter. Mm-hmm. And it's totally fine. That's like my review of Dirty Bomb is that it's totally fine if you need to play a first-person shooter and you can't really play other ones. It's all really well executed and it's all very slick and polished and well done. It's just that it's been done so many times already by now.
What's the business model like?
The business model is that you buy characters for one, and you buy loadouts for your characters that are based on cards. It's not great. It all seems a little expensive. And, and obviously they do the free rotation thing, Right. Like, these free characters are free this week, but a couple of sort of high points of it are, like, the moving and shooting is really good, and that it's objective-based, so every map is in, like, 3 segments. So, like, escort the truck to this part, and then, okay, now pull the canisters out of the truck and take them here. So it's like 3 maps inside one giant map every time you play around.
Right.
And I like that a lot, and... Some of the stuff's pretty funny. Like, when you try to resurrect somebody without having, like, the paddles, you just kind of wave at them like you're trying to get them to come over to you. And you just sit there waving your hands at them like, come here, come here, come here, for like 20 seconds until they finally stand up. That was pretty hilarious. And when you kill somebody, they freeze these ghost images of you and them. So it's like a still moment frozen in time of how you died. Just like...
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like visually really compelling.
Huh.
And so it's well made. It's just like there's so many class-based shooters out there right now that it just kind of, I guess, gets lost in the mix. But for something to just pick up and play every now and again, I don't think it's too bad.
Why would you choose that game over something like Team Fortress 2? And they sound sort of similar, or am I?
It's a little grittier, I guess you could say, than Team Fortress 2. It's sort of made to be more realistic, air quotes. But generally, I'm only playing Team Fortress 2 on like Wednesdays and Saturdays for the update stuff.
Okay.
You get new contracts every Wednesday and Saturday.
Okay, I get you.
That's mainly like what I'm playing TF2 for. Like I couldn't imagine jumping in there just to play it, which is weird, but that's kind of where I'm at right now with video games.
You need a goal, like a clear goal?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And it's kind of slotted into a schedule that's kind of made me sort of play more games than I would concurrently. This is kind of the evolution I'm reaching right now. I used to just play like one game relentlessly, and then until it was done, never played again. But now with all these dailies and stuff like that, I've got like this staggered schedule of video gaming, which should be toxic, but for some reason is really satisfying to me. So that's what's up with that. And, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, and we will talk about that later on.
Yeah.
All right. You want to move on into some topics?
Yes, let's
Go.
What if I told you guys that there was a way, with a very small investment, that you could increase your money by 10?
I would like to subscribe to this
Please tell me
newsletter.
more.
What if I told you that it was through gambling on eSports?
Well, I never.
So, gambling on eSports is a thing you can do. Websites are cropping up all over the place, mainly surrounding Dota 2 and Counter-Strike, as far as I can tell, because those have in-game items with a currency value attached. So it sort of rides in a legal gray area where you can bet those on matches between other professional players without actually technically gambling money, which I assume is how they sort of skirt the law on that one.
Yep. I know there's a couple of sites that have cropped up that they're kind of third-party exchange sites that let you cash in those items and stuff.
Yes, also true. So that's the loophole sort of part of it, right? Like taking the plastic dragon down and trading it for money that you won in the pachinko parlor.
Yep.
So it's just, I guess, kind of a shadier side, but not, I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's an interesting aspect to look at. Do you think that makes esports more legitimate? Do you think it's a bad thing, good thing? What are your thoughts?
It's doing things that other sports are doing now as well, right?
I was about to say, I think it's just like a natural evolution of it, considering how the interest has grown in esports in general. I think it was just a matter of time before that interest kind of started, peeking into the more monetary areas.
So esports are officially legit now. People are betting large amounts of money.
All we need is a drug scandal and we're good to go.
Oh, that's what they're going to do. That
too.
Yep, that's true. They're testing for, I think, what is it, ADH? Adderall, yeah.
Yeah, they're testing for loads of things, but that's a weird thing because that's not really the issue. I don't think that stuff has been proven to have performance-enhancing effects, and at least in the case of Adderall, how hard is it to get a prescription for Adderall? It's not. So they're like, they say prescriptions are fine, but everything else, you're going to be tested for, but I don't know.
Everybody's going to have Adderall prescriptions.
Well, exactly, right? So they're sort of backwards encouraging it in a strange way.
Right. You've been undercover, right, into the gambling, seedy underbelly of the gaming industry.
Yeah, so I started...
Do tell us.
I will. So I started playing Counter-Strike about 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks now, I think. And all I wanted was a grab bag of skins for that game. And I didn't want to go to the market and buy like a skin for every weapon individually. I just wanted I want to give some money and get a random pile of skins.
Right.
I couldn't find that anywhere on the internet. Like there was nobody selling that stuff. And as I sort of wandered through this land, I ended up finding multiple gambling sites for Counter-Strike. I found a poker room. I found a straight-up bet on esports matches. I found blackjack. There's ones where you put items in, and then based on the value of the items you put in, you have a certain percentage chance to win the pot of all the people who put their items in. There's just as varied as regular gambling is. Esports gambling is exactly that varied. And so I went in, started using a site, put a couple of keys in there, and just started betting on matches, and actually sort of ended up with a monkey's paw situation where like I won a grab bag of skins, which was exactly what I wanted. But withdrawing them would mean that like I would have to trade them back to the bots, to trade back to the server, to be able to, keep betting on other matches. But the way it works is pretty simple. Like once you have that stuff in, you say, I want to put these keys on this match. They send you a trade request through Steam, and it all seems pretty secure with the Steam API. It's supposedly, pretty secure around the edges. Mm-hmm. And you get a trade request from a random bot. You just send your keys off into space and hope to God they show up on this website. 100% of the time for me they have, so that's good. That side's fine. And then it's just as easy as clicking a team and clicking an item and then, saying go for it. And what I've seen, at least with Counter-Strike in particular, the odds on that site are all made by the players. So every game starts out at 50-50. And then as people put their money on each side, the odds change.
Right.
And in that way, because it's public opinion based, you can make bets in a way that playing the underdog is often the smart choice, because the odds might not necessarily be true odds because they're swayed by public opinion. So that's what I did. I just started betting on underdogs and actually got some returns, got my sweet grab bag of skins like I was talking about.
Okay, so it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out. The whole thing feels sort of weird. And my ultimate form, my supreme evolution of esports gambling, is that I'd subscribe to a service where somebody I guess monitors the matches and then tells you this is the bet for this match and who you should bet on. And I just log in, I look at that, I say okay, I place those for the day, and I walk away. And so far it's working out great. And I can't imagine, there's no way it could ever go wrong, right?
Famous last words.
Yeah, famous last words.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's...
Yeah, what's the community like?
There's not really much of a community. You don't really talk to anybody that I've seen. There's no interaction. You just see the matches and you see the list of, the things that people have bet. But I found myself watching some matches which the community there is absolutely toxic, like anywhere on Twitch is, And so that's not super great. The electronic dance music is all over the place on all these streams. That's almost a constant.
Of course, you can't do esports without trap and dubstep. You can't.
You really can't.
It's just science.
It is. It's got to be, because it is everywhere. And I watched some of the matches at first, and I think I might have got some benefit of that, in my actual Counter-Strike game. But overall, I eventually just stopped spending the time to watch the matches, just put the skins on, walk away. And ultimately, I'm not even getting what I wanted in the very beginning, was just to have a random pile of skins.
Right.
So it's been quite a journey, and it's really interesting. And it's all halfway shady, but yet halfway legitimate in a way that's really weird, but a lot of fun.
Well,
It sounds like it's not really about the game at all. Like you said, you place your bets and just walk away. You don't watch the games that you're betting on. Doesn't that sort of detract from the fun you might be having?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, there are people who are invested in certain particular teams,
Yeah.
But I think that the gambling it obviously enhances it, because I would never watch an esports game before this. It's sort of like watching paint dry to me, but this makes it interesting, exciting, and compelling.
Yeah.
But even with money on it, it's not enough to actually get me watching them on a regular basis, because you'd be watching 6 games a day or something like that, and that's too much. That's too much.
Right.
Well, for me, what I find interesting, though, is that with the advent of gambling, it actually gave way to, esports' very own gambling scandals. Speaking of Counter-Strike in general, I think last year around August, what's the name of the team? I think it was iBuyPower. They got involved in a pretty big scandal where I think they were participating in that year's was C Evo, and they were the favorite to win for the match, and they did terrible. I think they lost 16-4. So they got completely stomped, and everybody was kind of suspicious about it. But man, these guys are usually really fucking awesome. How did they they weren't even trying? And the team gave excuses we're just hungover, we're jet lagged, we partied too hard, whatever, we got overconfident. But after a while, I think people started coming forward. I think one of their ex-girlfriends, and I think another guy on a news site, the Daily Dot, had a story on this. It turns out that a lot of the players actually had agreed beforehand to throw the match. And not only did they agree to that, they actually made a lot of Smurf accounts and bet against themselves to collect the prize money for it. Or the prize items in order to get, exchange them. So, that's a thing that's happening now, too, with, the fact that gambling's there, you have people trying to beat the system now and cheating.
Absolutely. And like I said, since it is public opinion based, and the only reason that those guys got caught is somebody came out, and outed them and snitched on them, because I've seen maybe one game in the last 2 weeks that was so heavily skewed towards one side. It was 90%, 10%. And then 7 minutes before the match starts, it gains 3% on one side. So it's 87-13. because like all of a sudden $900 was bet on this underdog, and then the underdog ends up winning. And obviously there's no proof in that situation. You know, you can't say that that's an obvious throw, but it sure kind of seems like it.
Yeah, that makes you wonder, like, you know, if there's even a way to actually track this kind of thing.
I'm not sure. I don't know how they do it in other sports, but it's real suspicious.
I mean, I guess going back to that, do you think that because there's gambling, it kind of adds an air of legitimacy to esports now?
I think definitely it happens with every other sport, like I said at the start. So people willing to bet pretty large amounts of money on video games does lend some credence to games becoming, you know, reaching adolescence or coming out of adolescence.
I think that once you have gambling, you have more people invested and more people watching the matches, which then leads it to be more popular, which then gives it legitimacy.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just kind of like an unfortunate byproduct of it, or I guess almost growing pains?
Or a fortunate byproduct even. You know, like I said, for me, I wouldn't watch the matches otherwise, but since I've got something riding on it, now I'm interested, now I'm watching, and that viewer count ticks up by 1.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, now they have a stream with 1 million people instead of 500,000 because more people are coming to it and more people are watching, you know, the competitive side of things.
And people obviously see it as something that's important if they're willing to bet money on it, because they've got something riding on that part of the industry. They've got a personal stake in it.
Well, it's kind of interesting, though, because now you have, I mean, even though I think gambling is against the terms and conditions for a lot of the games on Steam, at least in regards to catching them out and, you know, exchanging them for real money, the system is almost put in such a way that it kind of encourages it and it makes it a seamless transition between, you know, gambling your items and then just cashing them out later on.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically the Valve games, right? Because they're the ones that have items that you can trade in a market, you know, for real money.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other games have competitive scenes. There's tons of games with competitive scenes, but there's no actual in-game items that you can sort of obfuscate the ties to actual money by using those. And so I think that's why it's more prevalent in Counter-Strike and Dota.
Developers not allowing people to gamble on their games does not mean that people will not gamble on the games. I mean,
well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it probably never happened before that some developer or some company said you cannot do this, and people said, all right, then fair enough. That never happened.
There's a company called was it Unicorn or Unacorn? It's Nuikrn, and we actually wrote a story of this on Gamersalt a few weeks ago, but they actually recently got a $7 million investment from like a bunch of different, I think it was like from Razer, from like Logitech, HP, Tabcorp, and even, you know, what is it, Mark Cuban from Shark Tank. They all threw money at this company. And the funny thing is, this company, their primary service is providing an easy way for gambling on esports.
Great.
Yeah.
It's out there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not only that, but the fact that now you have, I guess, quote unquote, legitimate companies that are getting, you know, sizable investments to facilitate esports gambling.
Well, what's more important, they facilitate safe esports.
Yes, that is true.
Gambling, which is even more important. If you can make it safe and all above board, you sort of remove the stigma. You can make sure that the people betting on that stuff won't lose money to, you know, people just trying to take their money for nothing.
Yeah, or servers going down, or like weird glitches and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely good to feel secure. Yeah.
It's like a layer of insurance, basically, and that is good. That's good for the gambling scene.
I just think it's interesting though that, like I said, like gambling is technically against a lot of the terms and services for a lot of the Valve games, but you know, you have these third-party websites that are, I mean, not even third-party websites. You have big companies like, I mean, Logitech and Razer that they're more than happy to, you know, throw money in to make, I guess, to facilitate, you know, this whole gambling like structure.
Yeah, there's obviously a demand for this, so why not make it legitimate?
And there's always been money in gambling, always.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, I guess, just human nature. Might as well capitalize on it. But the thing in particular with the skin gambling is that it allows it to be done in regions where perhaps gambling isn't exactly legal.
Yes, exactly.
Or hasn't exactly been legalized. It opens it up in different ways. So if this website is using real money currency, you're not going to be able to access it from everywhere.
Wait, so gambling is illegal in the US?
No, but in some states.
Right. Yeah, in some states, depending, okay. I think was for certain amounts. And
right, okay.
Yeah, it varies by state. But, you know, all you have to do is take it one level up so that you're betting items that are worth money that aren't actual money. And now all of a sudden, no matter where you are, you know, you can go to the websites and bet money on them.
Yeah, people will always find a way to circumvent the rules.
Yeah, that's a fact. And it would be good. I wouldn't mind a more legitimately sort of based website, because even though I've never had a problem with the websites I've been using, it still feels a little bit shady in the back of my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, something absolutely rock solid, clad, legitimate would be amazing.
Yeah, get it all out in the open so people don't have to go to dive bars and deal with some guy who calls himself Johnny the Gun or something.
Yeah.
Just make it legitimate.
Actually, Sam, going back to what you were saying about gambling, I was actually reading a couple of things, and apparently it turns out as far as gambling on sports, it's actually not legal. Aside from the state of Nevada, you can't really legally gamble on, like football, hockey, or any sports like that. And I guess video games fall under a weird gray area because they're technically fantasy sports.
Well, and it's not actual cash money, I think, is where that loophole mainly comes in. Like, not, you're not putting actually $5 down, you're betting like some weapon skins that really have no actual tangible value.
That's true, but I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of connecting the dots when, you have, because the process currently is, you gamble your skins, you get the skins, and then you can cash them out. And I think the issue comes when you're going from that transition when it's just a virtual item and then you're cashing out for real currency. And I think that's where like the gray area is kind of starting to form.
Yeah, fortunately for me, I have no intentions of cashing out. Like, that was my whole intention, was just to get a grab bag of random skins, and we're still on track. So
wink, wink.
So you're very honest. So you've been very honest about this. You just wanted something that was not money, and you got it.
That's all I want, man. All I want is a skin called an Op Asimov. That's all I want, and that's like $20, and like we're 15 up right now, so almost there. Almost met the goal.
Plus, you were in Nevada last week, were you not?
Yep, that's right.
I kind of wonder how much foresight went into that, though, when Valve was setting up their marketplace for items and skins. Because I don't know, that just seems like it's too good of a thing to not include. Because you're pretty much setting the infrastructure up for it. You have these items, you can trade them with other players. It almost creates like they knew it was eventually going to lead to gambling without really saying it.
I think maybe they just wanted to set up the market, because it gets money into the Valve ecosystem and then keeps it there and makes items more easy to move around.
Right.
I think that was their intention. I think that the gambling thing just came up as a maybe happy accident in a way, because it definitely
byproduct model.
Yeah, and it definitely fuels the fire. Like, it makes their original intentions, much more valuable to them.
I don't know, it's weird. I guess just when I look at it, I kind of look at it akin to you walk into a casino and they just kind of drop a bunch of chips in your hand and they're like, "Have fun, do whatever you're going to do." And like, there was nobody there to say, "Hey, they might want to cash these out at some point."
Yeah, they created the market and then basically gave you
the currency for it.
Yeah, exactly. They gave you the opportunity to gamble with it, but they told you that you're not allowed to do it. But people are going to do it, obviously.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, without going that weird sort of gray market route where you convert them to real dollars, all you're doing is sort of changing your chips into more chips. Because all you get at the end would be Steam Wallet money, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah. Which is not real money.
No. But, I mean, you get a few games here and there. But it never really escapes the ecosystem, which I'm sure is good for them.
Yeah, gambling.
But it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Gambling. Legalize it.
I have a system, is what I'm saying.
It's totally safe.
Totally safe.
25 installments of $55 per.
Yeah.
And that system can be yours.
Act now.
I read a article the other day about games on Kickstarter and how many of those games that were successfully kickstarted actually came out. And here's a quote from the article. It wasn't GameSpot. I'll put the link in the description. And it says, "At the time of writing, of the 186 of the successfully funded projects, 63 have made their way to the market, while 10 have been classified as failures. Some of the more infamous disappointments include Code Hero, The Stomping Land, and Yog Ventures." And I want to talk about this because Kickstarter seems to be the sort of soup du jour of game development right now, where game developers left and right are getting kickstarted. The latest example is, of course, Shenmue 3, which got, let's see, over 6 million over the duration of the Kickstarter project, and then then the rest got funded by Sony, obviously. But what do you guys think? Is Kickstarter a valid way to fund games, or is it more a great way to show bigger developers or bigger investors that people are asking for this game? Or should we just stop putting our games on Kickstarter? What do you think?
I think it makes sense. In theory, it's a really great thing. You know, if it's by the sort of ideals from Kickstarter, somebody has a vision, they don't have the fundage to make that vision. They bring it out, they crowdsource it, they get the money, they build their dream. Those building blocks sound amazing. It's just that it's been taken and spun into all these weird contexts, like a pre-order system and giant publishers with huge war chests bringing their games to Kickstarter just to gauge interest, when obviously, you know, they don't need the money. It's just to get, you know, show that people are involved. Yeah. But like at the very core basic level, I think it's amazing. It's sort of become a much more monstrous beast than it, you know, looked like at the beginning.
Yeah, I like the whole by the people for the people thing that crowdfunding is essentially about. I mean, you can help a concept get realized, which is very cool. But it's been used too often to sort of show investors that there's an interest for this game. And I don't think that is why Kickstarter is there. It should kickstart your entire project, not show investors that there's interest for it.
I definitely feel like the purpose of Kickstarter has kind of shifted in the last few years, because I don't know, I feel like it started as a seemingly benign, you know, platform where people could fund their, you know, projects or see community funding for it. And I see more and more lately it's turned into corporations using it to gauge interest, kind of as they use it as a market research tool more than anything. Yeah. That's not saying that they can't, because I mean it does provide valuable data, because obviously when you have people that are actually committing money, you have a more tangible way of telling whether or not they're interested, rather than if you just give them like a survey or something. Case in point, Shenmue. You know, for Sony to fund it, you know, for them to see that it got funded within 24 hours, for them it's a clear sign. Okay, well obviously this game's, you know, there's people that want this game, there's a desire for it. You know, we'll back it up. But if they went by just, you know, like some random survey saying who wants Shenmue, that doesn't really give them anything.
I get the feeling that with Shenmue 3, Sony was always going to fund them because they had a spot on Sony's show at E3.
I don't think they were always going to fund it. I think that they told them to launch a Kickstarter in order to gauge the audience's interest. Because I'm sure if that Kickstarter would have flopped, they wouldn't have even like lifted a finger to help it out. I'm
not sure. I'm really not sure. It sort of seems suspicious to me. And they were at the show, and Sony gave them their place in the spotlight, the 5 minutes of fame, basically.
Yeah. Well, it could have been just that they saw it and they were like, you know, this would be cool, but it's also a giant risk releasing a game.
I don't really think it was a risk, because look at how much money that game got on Kickstarter. You sort of have to sort of concede that Shenmue has always been a very popular franchise and was still a very popular franchise. People have been asking for Shenmue 3 for years now.
Right, but you can't really use the evidence that shows that it wasn't a risk to sort of put that on the situation beforehand where they didn't know. Like, you can't use the answer and put it before the question mark. Yeah, it could have been that leading up to it, it could have been just another one of those games that everybody talks about online, but does it actually have market value? Might have been an unanswered question. But, you know, it might have been unanswered in the way that they were pretty sure, but it never hurts to be absolutely sure.
Yeah, that's true. Want to hear what, in my opinion, is the biggest flop that ever came out of crowdfunding? And I think you probably will agree with me. They requested $950,000 and they got over $8 million, and that's the Ouya.
Oh, the Ouya. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. It's the company has been bought by Razer now. Nice. And they're they're going to do something completely different with it. And then play Android stuff. But yeah, that was one of the biggest successes on Kickstarter. I think it was the most successful Kickstarter ever when it got kickstarted, and it failed tremendously.
It's because it looked good on paper, but actually playing the actual thing did not turn out as well. The controller was kind of crappy.
The control was awful. I remember that. I think that there was like some issues with design, because I think it went through like 6 or 7 design like iterations before it was even like finalized, didn't it?
Yeah, and an Android gaming console is not really feasible. At least I don't think it is.
But who knows? I mean, maybe it's because, you know, the experiences aren't specifically designed towards a console. Like, Android might be fine to run a console, but it's just like bringing phone experiences over to that console is not the way to go about it.
Right. I think my biggest gripe with Kickstarter is that there's no real consequence if projects aren't aren't completed even after funding.
But that's the thing with Kickstarter. You're not paying for the product. You're paying for an idea. You're funding an idea.
Exactly.
And there's and nowhere does it say that there's a guarantee that it will come out. You're funding something that may or may not come to fruition.
Yeah. Caveat emptor, like big time.
Yeah, and that is the risk of being an investor in something. You can invest in something and it might never come out because of a list of reasons.
Can investors at least take legal action, though?
I don't think so. I don't believe so.
I don't think it has ever happened, and people who funded the Ouya, for instance, they may have had enough reason to do so.
I don't know. I feel like if, as an investor, like you almost have get like a contract signed that you guarantee a return on their investment within a set amount of time. Otherwise, you forfeit or something.
Well, that's the thing is you're not exactly you're an investor like by definition, but you don't obtain any of like the rights that would come to an investor.
No, yeah, exactly. Like with I don't know, it feels like with projects like Kickstarter, there's no real accountability. And case in point, Mighty Number 9. I was beyond psyched for that game, but that game's been pushed back so many times now. I think right now we're looking at a 2016 release.
Yep, and then they started doing all the shady stuff like asking for more money, and then their other Kickstarter,
Red Ash, which Red Ash failed, and that's one of the things where they actually. I think part of the reason that failed was because they launched that Kickstarter before Mighty Number 9 had even shipped. I mean, that's a big issue right there. That's bound to raise some eyebrows.
Didn't Double Fine do something similar?
Yeah, Tim Schafer and his...
It was, Double Fine Adventures and Massive Chalice, I think?
That had a lot of negative player feedback because they kind of felt that they got gypped with the product that they released afterwards. Was it Yog Ventures? Was it the other one? There was a huge controversy surrounding that because basically I think that the developers just kind of took the money and ran. And I think people were kind of pissed off because I think the guys that do the Yogcast, they were kind of not necessarily blamed for it, but people were saying that they kind of had a hand in it and basically because I don't remember they talked about on their podcast, they mentioned the site, they mentioned the Kickstarter, like, oh, they're making a game about us, blah, blah, blah. So people were kind of putting two and two together saying that they might have had a hand in, almost like scamming people. I'm not saying they did, obviously. Yeah. This does not reflect the ideas or views of this podcast, but I'm just saying, this is what people were saying.
Well, the potential is definitely there. I can think of at least one board game Kickstarter I've seen where the guy just never published it.
Ah, man.
And that was that. All those backers are out that money.
And this is a bit of a tangent because it's not gaming related, but Dean Tripp put together a really cool looking Kickstarter for a book called Something Awful, which is based on a webcomic he did. And it didn't seem like it'd be that much work because essentially what he was just doing is making a hard copy version of this webcomic, which is fine, but he has not delivered to anybody. And people are upset because not only did he not deliver, he suddenly used that influx of funds to finance a bunch of other stuff for himself.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, it's very shady. It's very shady. But if there is one benefit that has come out of Kickstarter, I think it's that it's sort of made people more aware of just how much it costs to get a video game made.
Well, not really, because video games are really, really expensive. And even Shenmue, even though it raised $6 million, that is nowhere near what it's going to cost to actually make the game. So people still don't really have a concept of how expensive it is. Especially now, you can hear anything between 60 million for a game or 500 million, for instance, in the case of GTA 5. A lot of people still don't really have a concept of how much developing a game actually costs.
That's true, because I think with Kickstarter, you also have to take into account there's that, I guess, the unwritten expenditure you get from marketing in general.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more in terms of the indie titles and stuff like that. You look at some of those games and go whoa, that's $100,000. That's crazy. Maybe that's just me. I never would have thought that was the cost to create some of these games, very small titles. Larger titles, you always know it's in the millions, but to sort of be able to say, oh my god, 50 million, 6 million, it's crazy.
Talking about millions, Star Citizen, they asked for $500,000, and you know how much they raised? 23 million.
Wow.
Well, but look at the amount of effort that's been put into that game and all the different modules they have on it now.
Yeah. That is a game that I'm really interested in because it really seems like it's going to be good.
I hope.
Look at the amount of money they got. They can probably realize everything that they set out to do from the start and more.
They can, but again, with Kickstarter, you always have that question in the back of your mind. It's what if they just never complete it?
Yeah, there's always a chance of that, but that's the thing with Kickstarter. You don't invest in something if you don't have the disposable income to do so.
And not only that, but I don't think it really gives people an accurate representation of what goes into a game, because even though you have benchmarks, when you have these titles that get overfunded, it kind of makes you wonder, what do people do in regards with all the abundance of funds? Because not everybody adds adds, more stretch goals, and not everybody will eventually return that into some kind of investment to the community.
Those people are probably setting up a company or thinking of the future of their company.
But enough negativity, because, on the plus side, Kickstarter has given us some really great games, and personally, it saved a couple of studios, Larian Studios, for example, with Divinity Original Sin. I think there was a few articles that came out a while ago talking about how Larian Studios, when they made that game, they pretty much went near bankrupt for it. But
yeah, that game was fantastic.
Yeah, they ended up putting a great game that I will beat someday, I promise. I'll finish it.
Let's not forget the Oculus Rift, which was also kickstarted. Elite Dangerous, also kickstarted. Wasteland 2, also Kickstarter.
Well, not only that, but I think you have these concepts like the Oculus Rift, where on the one hand, more serious publishers might not look at it seriously, and then when they get that running start from Kickstarter, then they start kind of making waves, and it eventually will lead to other people trying, raising competitors and other products. If Oculus Rift hadn't succeeded at Kickstarter, I don't think we would have seen them get A, bought out by Facebook, and B, we wouldn't see the slew of VR from Sony, from Valve, from other companies trying to match up with it.
Yeah, and they've been very influential so far. They inspired a whole new branch of the industry.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Like, by Kickstarter, just the people saying that they wanted it has then sort of snowballed into this whole nother section of video games.
Even stuff like the Pebble Watch. The Pebble Watch is technically one of the first, smart watches that we had recently. And I think because of the success that Pebble did, then all of a sudden it kind of broke ground, and you have things like the Apple Watch that came out recently. You have the Note 1 that came out that had its own little smartwatch along with it. So it does at least kind of open the door for smaller developers to kind of come up with these new ideas that can eventually be adopted by bigger companies.
And I'll tell you that, some of the stuff that gets delayed or doesn't get shipped as much is not all the time just somebody trying to be shady. And sometimes just companies have costs and expenditures that they didn't account for that crop up, and maybe they didn't set their goal high enough. I've personally ran a Kickstarter for a miniature gaming company, and there's just so many ins and outs that it's really hard to keep track of everything. But when it works and it's a positive experience, I think everybody wins. It's just like I said at the very beginning, that core ideals of Kickstarter get sort of twisted in different ways. But at its heart, it's an absolutely cool thing.
It turns the industry into a meritocracy, essentially. If your idea is good, people will see that. You might get funded.
Yeah.
You've got a bit bigger chance of delivering that thing that people paid money for, or people invested in.
It's like an actual use for pre-orders.
There you go.
In a way.
Yeah.
Actually, going along with that, do you think people misunderstand the concept of Kickstarter?
Well, yeah, they think they're buying something that is 100% guaranteed to fall on their doorstep within a reasonable amount of time. Well, it's not what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And normally the rewards for coming to the process so early should be enough to offset that risk, but oftentimes they're not. You're paying maybe $5 less than what the MSRP is going to be when the game comes out, and in exchange for that, you're sort of investing in a game that might never happen or might be in development way longer than it was advertised to be.
Right.
Like, saving $5 isn't exactly worth that, I don't think.
Yeah.
But people get invested in the hype of it all, and wanting to be a part of making something happen and feeling like they are a larger part of something when the extent of their involvement is really just a little bit of money.
It's funny you say that, because, going back to Shenmue 3, I don't want to sound like I'm being negative, but I honestly, and I'm just saying this from my time as a games journalist and just in the game industry in general, the demand for Shenmue 3, I never really considered it that big to begin with.
Well, wouldn't it be because the fan base is mostly in Japan?
No, not only that, it just seemed like it wasn't even just that big, period. And it seems that there's almost this internet hype machine that tends to kind of come out at certain times. And when they announced Shenmue 3, it was a mix of rose-tinted glasses and a bunch of older people saying, "Oh man, Shenmue 3 was the greatest game in the world," and it just kind of snowballed into the game getting funded within 24 hours, because it's been 15 years since the game came out. I cannot make sense of how a game that's 15 years old got funded within 24 hours. I don't know.
Apparently it had a large cult following.
And, you wonder how many of those people actually played the old ones and how many people were invested in the urban legend of this great game that they hear about on the internet.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm wondering how much of those people that invested, how much of it was actually, like you said, Sam, it was they're just kind of invested in the idea of what this game was, and they just caught up in the moment and oh man, I'm throwing money at this because I want to be part of this cool crowd that's investing in Shenmue 3.
Oh, that would be the worst reason to fund a Kickstarter ever.
Oh, maybe I'm just being cynical.
But it might be a thing. It might be a thing that happens for sure.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. It's just it would surprise me.
Maybe I'm just being cynical, but I just don't see how an interest in a game can last 15 years to the point where, people want to throw, $6 million at it.
Yeah, it's probably just as you have cruised the internet, like every time you've come upon a reference to Shenmue, somebody said, oh, that game's amazing. And then so that's now your narrative. Is like, oh man, this game's going to be amazing because the old ones are amazing, even though the only interaction you had with it was somebody saying how good it was. But as long as, because basically the way I would understand it is even though it's a small amount of people, it's universally praised.
Right.
So if the only sort of things you've ever heard about that game is how it's good, well, then that becomes your story now.
Yeah, and it's funny because
maybe I should mention this. Maybe you're right. Maybe the fan base isn't all that large, but the fan base does seem to consist of people willing to shell out a decent amount of money because the backers, the entire number of backers for the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter was just over 69,000 people. So not all that large.
Yeah, I guess that's true, because I guess in the bigger scope of things, 69,000 people really isn't that big of a number comparatively.
No, if that game came out and sold 69,000 copies, that would be a huge disappointment.
Yeah, it's true.
So maybe it's got a cult following that is, for all intents and purposes, really rabid about...
Maybe it was just a small group of people willing to throw a lot of money at it.
Yeah.
In those terms, that's much easier to think about. I can believe that there's 69,000 people out there who think Shenmue is awesome.
It's worth, up to $6 million total.
Yeah, maybe they're all rich Japanese businessmen who have got really fond memories of Shenmue 2.
They have really fond memories of pachinko machines and sailors.
But Kickstarter, huge potential, huge downside.
I guess it's important when you submit to Kickstarter, you're not buying a product, you're buying an idea. And I think that's what a lot of people forget.
Yeah. Exactly. There's no guarantee that you'll ever get the product that you funded. So don't fund something if you can't miss that money.
Are you guys familiar with the concept of the Murtaugh List?
No, tell me more.
All right. You've seen Lethal Weapon, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Lieutenant Murtaugh was the character Danny Glover played, and he's the one that kept saying, I'm too old for this shit whenever something would happen to him. And then a show came along called How I Met Your Mother, and they actually created the concept of the Murtaugh List, which is kind of a list of things that you're just getting too old for.
Oh, wait, I've seen this.
Yeah, and I started thinking about that and applying it to video games, where I think with Gamescom, I saw a couple of trailers for games, and particularly Dark Souls 3. I love playing the crap out of Demon Souls. I liked Dark Souls. Dark Souls 2 was okay. And then Dark Souls 3, and I saw it, and part of me just felt like I was getting too old for this game. I don't know what it was, but it just didn't have the interest. And I kind of started going through my Steam library, and I was noticing there's a lot of titles that I played way back in the day that I put, hundreds of hours in, that I pick up now, and I just, for whatever reason, I'm just not interested anymore. And I was kind of wondering if you guys have kind of gone through that, if your taste in games have changed as you've gotten older.
Slightly. Not as dramatically as you, I think. I tended to gravitate more towards big explosions and stupid one-liners, stuff like GTA, Vice City, for instance. The very, very corny but really well done, over-the-top, open-world type game. I was really, really into that when I was 13, 14, all the way up to 18. Now I tend to go more for narrative experiences.
Yeah, I think my tastes have definitely changed, but I don't know if I would necessarily attribute that to age as much as to the trappings that come along with getting older and the social responsibilities that kind of snowball on you the older you get. However, there are certain games that you look at the competitive aspect of it and realize that, I'm never going to be able to play that. And even though I might not have when I was younger, I'm not going to play this game on a professional level. It just sucks to see that door closed, even if it's a door I would have never walked through.
It's nice to have the option.
Yeah. So, reaction times fade off, that's just kind of the way it goes.
Well, it's really funny because you see that a lot with eSports, especially, things like Counter-Strike and League of Legends, where they're fun games and I've played with them casually, but it's just so daunting when I look at the Pro League and I'm just I'm too old to even consider this anymore.
Well, they even the pros age out. They get 27 years old and they're just can't do it. Sorry.
I've got about 3 more years in me then.
Yeah, that's your eSports prime, man. Don't waste it.
Yeah, time to get that Dota 2 thing on the road. Now is the time.
So it's that kind of slowness, I guess, of reaction speed that comes along. And I'm not saying that happens to everybody, but I definitely feel like it's happened to me. I'm not quite as fast as I used to be, but a little bit better at maybe thinking strategically and coming at it from a different angle.
But that reaction time, does that really factor into your ability to just play games?
Oh, no.
It does for competitive games, especially when you're playing against other people.
Yeah, and with matchmaking and stuff, it sort of levels that out because it'll put me in a bucket with other people who are of the same skill level as I am. So I could still play that game and have fun because I'm playing against, people who are theoretically equal to me. It's more of a missed opportunity thing, having to settle, like I said about the doors, you know?
It's not really settling, is it? It's just you prioritize things differently once you get older.
Yeah, and I think that outside of the reaction time thing, the main sort of shift that comes along is that as you get older, if you love video games, you just play more video games, because just over the time scale, you've just been exposed to more and more things. So I think that your tastes sort of naturally shift because there's less of the new and more of the comparing to the old. So, you know, I like to find video games that are fresh and new and interesting to me, and it's just, you know, I have so many comparative little bullet points that I can say, oh, this is kind of like this, and oh, this is kind of like that, that's kind of harder than it was before.
See, I'm not like that at all. I like original games and I like fresh-feeling games as much as the next guy, but I tend to go for games that give me a meaningful experience in terms of, you know, a world that I can visit that is completely new and alien to me, or a story that is very compelling, stuff like that.
Yeah, and at least like the ingrained knowledge kind of stuff that we talk about that you build up over time, there's just so much of that it's not, the learning is not in it as much as it used to be, because everything sort of seems to fall into an archetype, and you just sort of automatically know things without having to learn them. But like when I get so much fun from the learning process, it just kind of becomes a bummer.
I know, it depends, because for me, I know games that have that really steep learning curve, I find them a lot harder to get into nowadays, just because there's a mixture of not having enough time, and I just feel like it's a lot more effort than I'm willing to put in. I know we'll talk about this later, but Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, you gave us a little bit of a rundown on how to kind of start the game up. If it hadn't been for that, I'm honestly going to say I probably wouldn't have gotten into it.
Yeah, that's not a problem for me, because I think I've also sort of come to grips with the term of, like, instead of binging on something, like parceling it out. You know, so even though this game might have a steep learning curve, I sort of see like, okay, I'll play it an hour today, an hour tomorrow. You know, I don't have a chunk of time to sit down and just binge on it, but I sort of see farther into the future, I guess, and like realize that I can pick it up a little at a time. So it's not as daunting.
I definitely agree with that, though, because I'm definitely not in a position where I want to binge games anymore. A perfect example is like World of Warcraft. Back in the day when I first started playing it, because I remember I started playing it towards the tail end of vanilla, right when BC started. Yeah. I remember, like that was the kind of game you would binge for, you know, hours at a time. You would, you know, get together with your friends. You would put out like 3-4 hours a night just to kind of grind, get set up for gear, and that's not even taking into account raid nights. And fast forward to now, when I play WoW, I mean, I'll play for maybe an hour, and that's pushing it.
See, this is where the age difference between all of us becomes pretty stark, because I am the youngest one here. I am Enrique's junior by 4 years, I believe.
Yep, it's okay. You're old at heart.
I'm already old and bitter, but I don't really have a problem with playing games for about 4 or 5 hours sometimes if I'm enjoying the experience, and I play a ton of it. Just this week, I played City Skylines for 6 or 7 hours one session, and I didn't feel burnt out after that.
But see, for me, it's not that I feel burnt out. It's almost like with a game like World of Warcraft, when you're making those binge plays, it almost feels like, you know, you can get involved with other people doing groups, and it feels like there's this obligation that for me, I don't care for. But when I have games like Fire Emblem I was talking about, I can sit down and play for like 2-3 hours, because in the back of my mind, I know that I can just close it, stop, and walk away whenever I feel like it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's not going to be, I don't know, I guess as I'm older, that social obligation, I don't care for it as much.
Yeah,
unwilling to commit.
That's why I fell off online gaming for a long time. Like, I've only recently started to get back into playing games online, because you have to segment out that chunk of time, because you don't want to be a dick, you know? You don't want to let those other people down. You don't want to ruin what they're coming to the game for, but if you can't set that side of time, that's why I was doing mostly single player, you know, for the last few years, and just recently basically started from doing this podcast and playing games with you guys, where it's like, okay, you know, it's okay if I have to just jump out of this, you know, like it's a safe environment for me to start playing multiplayer again. And then since I did that, I realized that, you know, I actually have a little more time than maybe I thought I did in my head. But that's the thing, is it sort of seems like it comes from age, but really you could have a young person who just had a ton of stuff to do that would basically be in the same situation. It's just that age sort of naturally accumulates all those things.
Yeah, right. It doesn't hurt that I don't have a kid like Hassan does.
That's true. That's a pretty big time sink, but it's also 10 years worth of a second player if I just wait a little bit longer.
That's true. You just gotta like curate that right now. Just nurture it.
That's my plan. Yeah. Mandatory second player.
But what if she grows up not liking video games at all?
Well, that's okay too.
Okay.
That's okay too.
So, like, how are you raising her? Are you raising her so she'll be like a really shitty second player, so you can always beat her for a sense of like gratification, or do you want her to give you a challenge?
I'm crowdsourcing it, you know. So I got a Survey Monkey up, and it's basically just a list of questions about raising my daughter. If you want to go over there, it's. No, but that's part of it. You know what I mean? You just get older and shit just changes and it sucks. And I don't know if it's just playing more video games. I don't know if it's time-based, but I can definitely see that like the way I engage with games has changed. And that if it was less important to me than it is, I might not be engaging with it at all. And I don't know if that's routine from just playing games for so long that it's just like a part of what I do, or I'm not sure exactly where it stems from, but the types of games I play have changed and the way I sort of come to them has changed.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that why you gravitate towards roguelikes a bit more, because they are inherently very quick experiences?
Well, that's not necessarily true. I sort of gravitate to them because they're very complex and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there.
Right.
They're normally sort of hard to learn and difficult to master, and you can put a lot of time into them, but you could also, jump in, jump out. Mostly I like them because they're so convoluted. That's my main draw to roguelikes, is when you get in there, so much more information like to learn and sort of put into your toolbox, and learn how to manipulate that world is a vast undertaking. So there's a constant flow of information that comes from them that makes other games sort of seem solved in a way. And that slow, and it doesn't hurt that they're turn-based. So that slow contemplative nature is something I find clicks really well with me.
So Enrique, what would you say is the biggest change in the genre of games that you play now compared to the games that you played when you were 15, 16, something like that?
I'm definitely playing less multiplayer games, just in general. Or at the very least, I'm a little bit more selective with the multiplayer games that I do play. I remember when I was younger, I was perfectly content just jumping online with a bunch of strangers and going through there. But now, even with whether it's Diablo, Hearthstone, or even just playing like Rocket League, I'm actually carefully picking who I could choose to go online with. I always make sure that at least I have one or two people that I know personally before I jump online. So that's been a huge change for me in general. And I don't know if that's just from... I don't have the patience to deal with randoms anymore because of just trolling and the immaturity you can find online, or if it's just I just prefer to have my experiences just share a common ground with somebody that I know, and it makes them a little bit more enjoyable afterwards.
Yeah, make it like a social experience with your friends as opposed to a social experience with a ton of people you've never met.
Because for me, like with those multiplayer games, at least for now, it's not so much the game itself, but it's more the experience that I get from playing the game. And part of that experience comes from after we finish playing it, just talking to my buddies, whether it be of something like a fun thing that happened through the game, or just shooting the shit while we're doing it.
I think you could call it an overall shift from quantity towards quality.
Yeah, because I could definitely see that. Yeah, because like you said, it's not so much that you're refraining from doing it in general. It's just you're more particular about how you go about it, and that's kind of my case right now. That's been the biggest change. What about for you guys? I'm
probably about the same way. If you only know you're going to have so much time, you want to make sure that it's good time. And, if you were to just jump in and play Rocket League with randos, like, you're going to have people leave, and then there's 5 minutes of that precious time that I was trying to make good that's gone. And, almost any kind of multiplayer game sort of feels like you're exposing yourself to that risk, which makes them seem... not as good. I find that even though in the face of that, though, like I know that's a thing, but in the face of that, I still find myself trying all kinds of new little indie games and things like that, just trying to find a diamond in a rough. So it's sort of a balancing act between, I want my time to be quality, but I want these new interesting experiences. So, where's the middle ground in that? And that's sort of where I've landed. But I also have moved into that sort of scheduling thing that we were talking about in the What You've Been Playing, where I like it when games give me those small tasks with clean cutoff points. So you jump on, you do your 3 tasks for that day to get your gold or whatever, and then, like the game says, okay, you can be good until tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And I really like it. And I know that, in a lot of people's eyes, it's sort of bad game design to not let people play as much as they want to for maximum reward, and all this kind of thing. But for me, it's great because instead of playing one game just relentlessly until it's done, I split it out over the week into all these little scheduled time breaks for these little games, and it feels really great for me.
Until the game tells you that you've reached the designated fun quota for that particular game.
Yeah, and then I guess it's time to move on.
Yeah, I get you. I just go for more meaningful experiences, something that I can really sink my teeth in, something like The Witcher, for instance. Just a whole new world that I can explore, and characters that I get to meet, and choices that I get to make. Games that make me feel like I've accomplished something within a game world after I'm done playing with it, after I'm done with a session. That's what I really like.
Yeah.
Do you find that you're put off from games that might seem too overbearing? You know, if someone were to pitch for you, like the game The Witcher, without you knowing what the game is, and I told you, oh, you know, this is the game that's got 400 hours of gameplay, would that kind of be like a selling point, or would that actually turn you off at this point?
It really depends on how the game looks, like the setting and the genre. Like if it's an RPG, then that would get me over the line a lot quicker, because I really like RPGs, because I like stories.
Yeah, it sounds like you want to make sure that the takeaway is there. Like at the end of it, you can sort of look back and say, you know, that was an awesome story and I got to experience it and that was really meaningful, because that's the stuff you'll remember much longer than, oh, I scored 18 million points.
Yeah, exactly. I want to have that feeling of, when I see the credits, right? Mm-hmm. Just, oh no, it's over. Those kinds of experiences I tend to go for a lot more, as opposed to the quick explosion one-liner, die hard kind of stuff that I was into when I was a teenager.
Do you find that you're actually beating games less now?
I am.
Or do you play every game to completion, or do you find like you kind of more and more just finding a general stopping point and you never really beat the game?
No. When I buy a game, like a big game, something like The Witcher, or for instance, City Skylines or Skyrim, you know, just some examples, right? I tend to actually finish them, at least finish the story. Not sure about the side missions and all the other extra activities, but I tend to finish at least the story.
Good on you. I have no idea why I drop games. That's something I'd like to personally investigate. I don't know what happens, but it just seems like I loved The Witcher, and I haven't played The Witcher in like a month, maybe more, and I don't understand why, but...
Save it for a rainy day, man.
Yeah, it must be something going on.
There's going to come a time where you're just working on something in your house and you think, yes, Witcher 3. I'm going to do that now. And you can do that a lot of times in the future.
That's true.
We were talking about that earlier, and like I remember we were mentioning was the Divinity Original Sin. I was playing the crap out of that, and I was like really gung-ho, and then I got to a point in the game where for whatever reason I just didn't play the next day, and I just didn't pick it up since then.
Yeah.
That's what I did with XCOM, to be honest. Enemy Unknown. I started a game probably 6 or 7 times, never finished it, and I don't know why.
I started Divinity Monday of this week, and I was like, why haven't I played this? You know, like, why haven't I gotten back to this? This game's still great. Haven't picked it up for the last 6 days.
Yeah, see, and I don't know how much of that is just that I'm having trouble picking up games again, or if it's just that games have just become easier for me to drop now. Like, I don't have that urgency to complete it.
Maybe it's the overabundance of choice that makes you drop games quicker. Like, if I stop playing this one, then I can play that other game that I have my eye on for quite some time now.
I bet that's got a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Probably, yeah, that's true.
I wonder if that comes as part of aging too, because as you get older, you naturally have a slightly larger income stream in a way that now all that stuff is obtainable. So I'm not like 8 years old and I have one Nintendo game for the summer. Like, that's not a thing anymore. I can get a new game basically whenever I want to.
You know, I didn't even think about that, because you're right. Because I remember growing up, you know, you're very limited in what you actually have to play. So you were almost forced to put in like 300-400 hours into that game. I mean, I remember that's one of the reasons Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, I 100% of that game. You know, got every single hidden item, every like ultimate weapon, powered everything up. I beat all the side missions and hidden bosses, just because those were the only 2 games that I had for the longest time. So I really had no other motivation to not play it.
Yeah. Good point, actually.
Yeah, but nowadays, look at your Steam library or just like on your shelf. How many games do you have that you're sitting in the moment going around, you're like, I don't know what to play today.
Yeah.
And guess what? The older you get, the more games start piling up in that Steam library year after year after year.
That is true.
Oh, God.
So it's like all these things are sort of tangentially tied into aging, but aging isn't like the main primary factor. It's just that sort of as you get older, all these different sort of factors start to come together so that it has this enormous impact on the way that you interface with video games.
Yeah, there's just more opportunities for things like outside factors to influence what your kind of gaming ecosystem is now. Well, I guess going back to the concept of Murtaugh List, I guess if you had to pick one game to put on there, what would it be and why?
Never thought that I would say this, but after having played Warlords of Draenor, I think I'm getting too old for World of Warcraft.
Really?
Yeah, I do enjoy it, and I am going to play Legion, the next one, but I've only done 1 or 2 dungeons in Warlords of Draenor, and probably the same is going to happen in Legion, because I just can't really commit to that as much as before. I can play the game for 8 or 9 hours, but once I have to do endgame content, I start to get burnt out quicker, I guess. So World of Warcraft is tentatively on that list, but more the end game is on that list.
I don't know. How about Ninja Gaiden Black?
Oh God.
Oh God. Ugh.
There's no way I could play that right now.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult and punishing, and like speed reflex based and also combo based, and yeah, you know, like that's my reaction looking at it. Like I guess I'd like to, but I'm way too old for that shit.
So what about you, Enrique?
I hate to say this because this has probably been one of my favorite game series in like probably the last, I want to say like 7-8 years.
Right.
But probably Soul Calibur. Or just a fighting game in general, because I used to love playing fighting games. It's one of the perfect couch co-op experiences you can have. Trash talking to your friends, even playing online. I used to be like, things like, was it Dead or Alive? Soul Calibur was one of the best ones. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, not Ultimate Alliance, Marvel vs. Capcom. But it's to a point now where I pick those games up and I just don't have the patience to play that with other people. It can get too competitive too fast. There's always somebody that's just leagues better than you, that can handle the characters the ways you can, and it gets not fun a lot quicker than other games.
I can see that. Let me tell you about a card game called Yomi. It's a fighting card game. And it's turn-based, so there's no frame-perfect moves in Yomi. But I'm with you. I agree with you on the fighting game thing. Casual enjoyment, sure, but actually getting dedicated to something like that, yeah, I'm way too old.
Yeah, because I was going to say Dark Souls for the same reasons you quoted with Ninja Gaiden, Black, because it's like you said, it's just, I don't know if your threshold for frustration is just a lot lower now, at least in terms of when it's dictated by other people, which is why the game thing just gets me now.
Growing up and getting slow.
Stuff changes. Growing up.
It's a thing.
Video games are still fun. Don't let us fool you. Alright, this week we played Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, a turn-based roguelike that I recommended. What'd you guys think?
It's the second week in a row that I played something that I couldn't get into.
Yeah, it happens.
I guess I find graphics more important than I thought I would. And even, art style and graphics more important than I thought I would. Because I know that this game has tile sets that you could install, but there's only so much that can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't mind the graphics part of it. For me, what killed it, well, it didn't kill it because I did get into it eventually, but for me, it's just the barrier for entry just seems so high. The game didn't really do a good job of explaining, how to get into the game, controls, a lot of it. You kind of either had to do a lot of research outside of the game or just discovered through trial and error.
Yeah, it was very unintuitive.
That old school feel where you need to actually read the manual.
Yeah, you're right, it was. And not that I don't appreciate it, but I think it's just I'm so accustomed to games having built-in tutorials where, you're just told how to play, that it was very abrupt for me to actually have to take a step back and, go through the wiki and kind of read up on how the game works.
Yeah, it was quite daunting.
Yeah, I think that they get away with that because, number one, it's free, so they don't need to draw people in. Most of the people coming to it are sort of already ready for what they're about to get into. And the other thing is that it's because that stuff falls aside after, a certain period of time. All that stuff just becomes second nature. And so maybe they decided not to spend a lot of time elaborating on it. But I agree with you. That game could use a little bit. They could smooth that ramp out a little bit as far as like taking your first steps and learning how to navigate how all the keys and stuff work.
Yeah. Because if you have to go to the wiki, that instantly is at least a couple of minutes that you're not really playing the game or having fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I don't want to invest time in reading a wiki if I'm not entirely sure if I'm liking the game that the wiki is for.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. And that game asks a lot of you. It says, "Come on, let's hang out. It's going to be miserable for a little bit, but then it's going to be great." And that proposition has become very archaic, I guess, in recent times, and as games continue to be more and more designed in a certain way, that asking that trust of you has sort of fallen by the wayside. I understand that. Yeah. It's just we want to play different games. We want to play games we might not have experienced, and sometimes it might not work out well.
Let's give you a question then. What drew you to that game, and what makes you keep coming back?
I like the sort of anything is possible aspect of it. I like that so many interactions are in there and so many things are possible. Just by like looking at the action menu, you see like so many things, like cauterizing wounds and sewing up armor and taking vitamins and managing your hunger and your thirst and your sleep and all. There's just so much. It's very dense. There's so much going on there that it's great.
From what I've played, I told you this a couple of days ago that I could sort of compare it to DayZ in a way. Would you think that comparison is fair?
I don't, but I also haven't played very much DayZ, and most of this.
That's the thing. I haven't really played that much of DDA. So.
Yeah, the stuff I see about DayZ is just like, I don't know. It's like I don't want to play a virtual Tom Green show, you know. But like, an actual like, as far as actual survival simulators go, I think that this game just has way more content.
It does by far.
And I like the limited graphics because then your imagination sort of takes hold more. And the analogy I used was that even though I haven't played DayZ, I would say that DDA is more like reading a book and DayZ is more like watching a movie. As far as like how much of it happens in your own head.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think the thing that I liked about DDA though is that, I mean, I guess this is also just from the limited graphics, but the fact that the way the game is put together is that it leaves so much room for random things to happen. I know one of the lives that I did, I ran into, I guess, a coke den, I want to say it was, because it was a shelter with a lot of bodies.
And they were all dead, yeah. It's like a drug deal gone bad, yeah.
And I didn't even know like cocaine was in the game, but I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'm just going to loot cocaine. And I wandered around aimlessly for, I think, about 2-3 days with cocaine in my pocket for no other reason than just I could, until I settled near a swamp. And don't drink swamp water, I'm going to tell you that right now, because it does not end well for your character.
Yeah, don't drink swamp water, don't drink toilet water, yeah.
But I mean, it's cool, because I mean, I remember, because whenever I play RPGs, you know, like something like Fallout, Skyrim, even like, what is the Divinity, Original Sin, you're only allowed to do, I guess, to experience as much as what the developer has put in the game for you to do. So, you know, you can never really go outside of the confines of what's given to you. So, let's say like a Divinity Original Sin, you know, I see a treasure chest. This is one of the first games where I've played where a lot of treasure chests, you know, you have the option of trying to break it open, which is cool. But if they hadn't put that in there, that wouldn't have been an option. But a game like, you know, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, it's almost like, you know, you can kind of just come up with almost anything you can think of, and the game will, in some way, shape, or form, allow you to do it. And I think for me, that does wonders.
Yeah, it tells a lot of its stories backwards, too. Like, you come upon, like, you know, that bunch of dead drug dealers, or like a helicopter crash site, or like a house with, you know, a razor blade in the bathroom, and there's a zombie locked in there, you know, or something like that. And it's not exactly saying this is the story of what happened here. You kind of sort of create those events in your own mind. Which
is cool, because it gives you like a loose framework of like little small narrative bits.
See, I really like that idea that at a certain point you come upon all these things in the world that, you know, give you a sort of story, or a story that you, at least you yourself, can sort of make up in your own head. But it's the same with... Like, it's the same problem I had with, for instance, Breaking Bad, right? People kept telling me that, you know, after season 1, it's going to get really, really good. And I didn't like season 1. And if I don't like season 1, I don't really want to watch that just so I can get to the supposed good bits in season 2 and onward. And it's the same with DDA. I know that there's probably a wealth of great stuff in there somewhere, but I wasn't entertained at all. I was sort of annoyed and frustrated by the game systems and by the way that it controlled and how unintuitive it was, that I couldn't see myself having fun, at least not enough to sustain me until the game picks up.
Right, because they have to build that foundation. They have to give you the platform to make all those things possible. And you have to, like, see that you can do all these interactions with everything, but then you also have to memorize the key to do those interactions with everything. And it's a big ask. I mean, 100% for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that this has everything to do with me and nothing with the game itself. Just so we're clear. I'm not saying that the game is bad. I'm just saying that it didn't click with me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally cool, man. And I also like the turn-based nature of it, and the same way a lot of roguelikes have is that it allows you to sort of play yourself against yourself, because combat is just like, you know, push over and bump into the guy and then see what happens. And then you'll be like, okay, I could do that maybe 3 more times. And you're like, bam, bam, bam. And then all of a sudden, like, time turns to syrup because you realize you're about to be dead in one hit. And everything freezes and you're like, okay, shit, what do I do? Right? And those moments are what really define roguelikes for me, because there's so many options now, but you're also almost dead. So you're trying to calculate probabilities and figure out, like, what is the best thing I can do right now? And sometimes you pull it off and sometimes you don't. And a lot of those situations in Cataclysm for me, afterwards, like after I'm dead or after I escape and I have a time to breathe and I'm running back through the events in my head, like that's where the stories come out. Like I managed to break through this window and escape, lure these zombies into a basement, burn the whole house down. In the moment, that was a series of strategic decisions. I can move to this square in this amount of time. Okay, I can do this. It takes this many moves. We're good, we're good, we're good. And then only afterwards does the story sort of materialize in my head by like rolling backwards through it.
Well, I'm glad you can find that stuff in the game, because it sounds fun.
Yeah, it's there. And then also, I mean, comparing it to DayZ, this game goes in 100,000 wacky directions once you start to push it a little bit farther. Like you have bionics and you have weird nether creatures and you have like gateways to the underworld and laboratories and weird science, and you can mutate your character and get all these cool like power-ups and mutations and things, and all that stuff is exactly like you're saying. It's behind like basically a steel door that you have to claw through with your fingernails.
Yeah. One thing that I want to touch on, and that is the last point that I'm going to make, and this is also what I said to you a couple of days ago, is I miss I like survival games, but I like those survival games because of the multiplayer aspect, and that is something that, if this game had a multiplayer aspect, I suspect that I would have been into it a bit more, that it would have gotten its hooks in me a bit quicker, because I love the human interaction and stuff like that.
That I don't know, because I think the way this game is set up, it's definitely catered towards an individual experience because of just how much can happen.
See, I'm not saying that it definitely will, but I just have to get the feeling that if I could play this with my friends and survive with them, then I might have had more of a reason to push through the unfun stuff to get to the fun stuff.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. That'd be interesting.
Me neither.
You might like a game called Project Zomboid.
I know about this. I've heard about this.
I think I haven't checked it in a while because I got kind of bored with it. But I think they were working adding multiplayer to it, and it's not as fleshed out as DDA, obviously, because it still runs on a tile set, but it's like a 3D isometric view. So you're more limited on what you can do. But it has a similar concept where you can build your shelter, and it's just you're thrown into a world with a lot of zombies, and you eventually have to try to survive. And that kind of game experience can be really, really fun.
I'm looking at screenshots right now. I know this game. Yeah, that looks cool. I've been meaning to check that out.
Talking about scope in general, that's another one of the sort of draws of DDA, because you can destruct and construct basically anything and build anything and almost do anything, because they don't have to animate all that stuff. They don't have to draw models for all that stuff. All they have to do is put it in a spreadsheet database somewhere.
Yeah. And
so the scope of that game is enormous.
Yeah, like I said, I really liked DDA once you got over that initial hurdle, but I will agree with Chris, though, that it definitely has this it's almost like this intimidating like barrier for entry, that when you're looking at it, you see this tile set, you see like these controls that aren't intuitive at all. So for a lot of people, that's enough to kind of just limit their entry to the game.
Yeah, it doesn't really ease you into anything.
Yeah. And I mean, the game can even be that way. Like later on, it can be frustrating. Like, okay, cool, I have this great cabin. I want to surround it with spikes, and I want to dig pits and fill them with spikes. That can take you like forever just pressing the same series of keys in a row. And like, that's not fun. But you have the ability to surround your cabin with a spike moat, It's like a trade-off kind of thing, I guess.
I just don't like roguelikes most of the time either. I have said this before. I don't really know what it is, but the concept itself it doesn't really click with me.
Yeah. I don't know if I would call this has a lot of roguelike elements, but I don't know if it's like the purest iteration of that.
Well, it's not rogue. It's like rogue.
Yeah.
It's roguelike.
Even then, I think I could take you somewhere that sort of holds closer to those genre staples. This is just a really interesting game, just to like to look at and play.
Yeah. On paper, it sounds like something that I might enjoy, but didn't click with me, and I find that a shame, to be honest, because when I hear the stories that you told me over the past week.
Yeah, I was trying to entice you a little bit.
yeah, and it sounded really cool. Like, oh shit, like I love emergent storytelling, so this could be cool, but the game systems just worked against what I wanted it to do, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't really accommodate the actions that I wanted to do inside the game, so it made playing the game sort of hard for me, and it's a shame. It's a shame.
It's not a big deal. I knew that hurdle was going to be tough, so I was trying to draw you guys in as much as possible. Like that cabin that I built and surrounded with spike pits. I shot a bear with a rocket launcher and burnt down the whole forest, including that cabin where I had all my stuff stashed, and it's just like this shouldn't be possible. I'm glad it's possible. This sucks. Like it just stuff like that. It's just really interesting and compelling. But what do you think that we'll be playing next week? Because the pick goes to you, sir.
Yes. Well, I talked about this in the What Have You Been Playing section, and we're going to play Cities Skylines.
Oh, nice.
It is a really good game. It looks great as well. It's fantastic to see your city come to life and buildings getting more opulent and whole neighborhoods getting richer and bigger and houses get more beautiful, and then it turns into Gridlock Simulator 2015, and then the real game begins, and that is trying to lay out the roadmap in such a way that there's no congestion and that people can get anywhere that they like, while also trying to make the city look aesthetically pleasing. It's a great game. It's quite hard.
That's a good pick. I've been wanting to play that for a while. It's a good reason to get into it.
Yeah, and if you haven't played this before, anybody who's listening, if you haven't played this before, it is quite cheap, especially for the amount of content that you're getting. It has Steam Workshop support, so you can get all the mods that you want, and maps and stuff like that, vehicles, buildings. I would advise you that if you play it, you download the Traffic++ mod, because that makes handling traffic way easier, because the standard AI has a tendency of letting all the cars to drive on one lane on a road instead of, all 6 or 2 or 4 or what have you. And Traffic++ takes care of that one, makes it a bit easier to manage. So yeah, City Skylines, it's a pretty great game, and it does everything that the new SimCity didn't do, and in some ways it's even better than the SimCity games of yore.
That's awesome, man. And that is a great pick, because this week we will be moving our little play-along adventure onto YouTube and away from the podcast. Next week. Yeah, with City Skylines, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. It's a more visual game, and you guys don't have to watch us ducking around tile sets and stuff like that. We want to sort of not have to have you turn off the episode because you don't want to hear about us talk about a game. So we're going to move that content away and make it more optional, and hopefully it'll be better for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So please play along with us, and you can find our experiences and our thoughts on YouTube coming next week.
And that channel is Select Characters.
Yes, go subscribe to us, because we've got more content in the works. Ryan has just uploaded something new about metagames. I did a video on The Witcher 3, and Sam did a video on Yoshi's Cookie.
Stay tuned. And that will bring us to the end of episode 16 of the Select Characters podcast. As always, thank you so much for listening. You're the reason we do this and the reason we carry on. We really appreciate it. You can find us online at Facebook and Twitter. You can send us an email to selectcharacters@gmail.com. And keep an eye on our YouTube channel, where we'll be posting videos that you will probably enjoy if you like this podcast. So once again, as always, thank you and have a great week.